Welcome back to the European Football Show live on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Patrick Mullen, joined once again with Blair Malloy as we look ahead and look back on what has been already an incredible start to the Champions League. Blair, I'll kick it off. I feel like I ask it every single time. It's just been great, hasn't it?
It's great to be back, Patrick. It's been a long summer. Those little thing called the Euros that took place during the summer, but we're back to the proper football now. Domestic stuff is back in action. The Champions League is back, Europa League is back, Conference League is back, and midweeks are full again.
Yes.
There's nothing worse when you get to the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, there's no football on, not this week, and not any week it seems, because the Champions League is here all the time.
It is brilliant to be back. If you missed us, we had a few minor issues after game week 1, but we are back now. If you've never watched the show before, pretty much it's just a nice summary show, everything about the Champions League, give you some of the results, but it's not always about that. We'll give you some cool stories, a little bit of behind-the-scenes actions, and stuff you can take to your family and say, did you know this? And it all kicks off with Aston Villa, Bayern Munich, that game last night. What a victory for Unai Emery's side.
It was a great game, Patrick. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought that was going to be the game of the night. Looking across the board, I thought, such an iconic, historic figure, obviously the 1982 final. There was so much build-up about it, and for Aston Villa to be back in the Champions League and to get Bayern Munich, it was written in the stars that it had to be. And I thought they were well worth the win. I thought the Pau Torres goal, it was disallowed. It should have been disallowed, but you could just feel there was something in the air, and with the Villa Park absolutely rocking, and then obviously to win it the way they did. Incredible scenes.
I think those fans, they deserved it. I mean, when you get into the Champions League, they were so happy to be there, and they've competed so far. Some start by Unai Emery's side, and I think the bit that really stood out for me last night was I was watching it, and they scored that goal, and it was probably the first goal that got ruled out for the offside that really stuck with me. Those fans, they were going incredible. You just see how much it meant to them. That first home game in the Champions League, beating Bayern Munich. What a moment for them, and thoroughly deserved.
Yeah, Villa Park is one of those old school grounds with all that atmosphere. It's one of those grounds that I really hope doesn't get redeveloped. I hope they keep it in some capacity the way it is, because like you said, last night that atmosphere was absolutely incredible. And we have to talk about the goal, Patrick. John Duran, first time, sees Manuel Neuer. For a 20-year-old kid to do this on this level, absolutely incredible.
I mean, he just keeps doing it. I mean, every single time. Super subs, we're going to talk about them in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just so important to have someone like that who can come on, a young kid. He's running his legs off, and no better goalkeeper to put the ball over the top than Manuel Neuer. And I think Unai Emery, he kind of summed it up best, all about Jean Duran and him showing patience. We'll show you that one here.
He arrived here 2 years ago. He is young. His potential is a huge potential, but not now. Last year, he had the same potential. Sometimes impatient. Sometimes I need to speak with him as a person. Firstly, try to connect with him as a person, and then as well as a player, try to let him to play and put him on the field, because his talent is there.
Yeah, John Duran, he's had such an interesting journey to get to this point. As we said, this season, he's really taken on this role of coming off the bench. But it looked for all the world in the summer that he was going to leave. He started off his career in a club called Envigado in Colombia, which have a bit of a reputation for developing young players. James Rodriguez come through there. And then he made a bit of a surprise move to Chicago Fire in America, in the MLS, and then came over to play for Aston Villa. And there was this big talk about him in the summer when I know he was a bit controversy online when he was supposedly joining West Ham, and I think that's kind of what Unai Emery is touching on there, that he maybe just had to show that patience. Just bide your time, you will get your opportunity, and he's certainly taking it now, taking on this super sub mantle.
I mean, I think there's probably a lot of players that we could go into and discuss, not only who it maybe wasn't working out for how they wanted it, potentially thinking of making that move, for whatever reason it didn't happen, took their time, stayed where they were, worked hard, and their career has now skyrocketed. John Duran, a household name, especially in front of all of those Aston Villa fans. And it actually got us thinking last night. We were talking about it. Super subs, the Champions League, it's full of them. Blair, give me one. Who do you think?
Okay.
Who's your best super sub?
So we're coming on to the obvious one in a minute. I think everyone might already preempt where we're going to go with this. But I'm going to start off with someone a little bit close to home, and that is Henrik Larsson, who in the 2006 Champions League final came off the bench. You remember Arsenal were playing Barcelona, came off the bench for Barcelona with 1-0 down after that Sol Campbell header, 2 assists, they turn the game round and they lift the Champions League, which prompted this infamous quote after the game when Thierry Henry, he said 2 times he came on and that was the key of the game. Sometimes you talk about Ronaldinho, Eto'o, talk about the proper people who made a difference, and that was Henrik Larsson tonight. With 2 assists, because I didn't see no Ronaldinho and I didn't see no Eto'o. Now that is high praise indeed from Thierry Henry, no less.
I mean, no one remembers if you started the game or not. If you come on, you score a goal, you write yourself in history. And I don't think any player has written himself into history than the man I think we're all thinking about. If you said a super sub, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, that game.
He was the original super sub.
He is, yeah. But that was, I mean, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer made a career at Manchester United based off being a super sub or being someone that came off the bench. I know his time as manager maybe brought him to the spotlight in the recent times, but he came on in that 1999 final.
You'll know more than anyone how he's heralded so much just for that one moment. And it was a great finish, and obviously he'd done that in the league, he'd done it domestically, he'd done it all through his Manchester United career, finishing games. And it might almost ahead of his time, because now how many managers do you hear talking about finishers? They talk about players who are just as important at the end of the game as they are at the start of the game. And maybe 20, 30 years ago that wasn't really thought of. It was more, if I'm not starting, I'm not in the best 11. It's not like that anymore. Managers definitely have players to start the game and players to finish the game. And now the super sub, guys like John Duran. John Duran's arguably the most important player for Aston Villa right now. So, and he's coming off the bench.
I mean, I've heard stories multiple times of teams that are no longer calling their substitutes even substitutes. They are now the finishers, because the game is tactically so much more advanced and they're thinking about it so much more. Just because you don't play the first 60 minutes when the game is more compact and everyone's kind of fully fit. So a player that can do that in the last half an hour, I mean, you can't really ask for much more.
John Duran really is a perfect player to do that, because he's quick, he's got strength, and he's obviously got a finish. And there was a thing recently online where it was Barclays men, where they was going through sort of retro clips of guys from the mid-2000s who scored what I think the technical term is bangers, just from everywhere, from 25, 30 yards out. John Duran strikes me as one of these guys who, in years' time, we can look back on and go, that's a cult player. That's a player who scored great goals and is just someone that is instantly clippable all over the place.
Perfect. I mean, we've got to talk about another English team, Liverpool, another victory for them. Arne Slot, it just keeps on getting better. A good result for them last night.
Yeah. And Bologna, who one of represented up here behind us. Bologna, who I think will do okay in the competition this year, but obviously Liverpool are just streets above them. But one of the key stories to come out of that last night was Mohamed Salah, who overtook Didier Drogba's record as the top goal-scoring African player in Champions League history. He scored his 45th goal in 81 games last night. That overtook Didier Drogba's record of 44 goals in 92 games. So Mohamed Salah getting there just a little bit quicker. And it made me think to discuss the two of them. And I seen this, it split a few people online. Who are you having out of those two, Mohamed Salah or Didier Drogba?
I think for me, I'm still going to go with Didier Drogba. I know Salah in the Champions League, he scored more goals in less appearances. And we're only talking about competition, the group stages and the knockouts.
Yeah, no qualifying rounds here.
For me, I have a very core memory of Didier Drogba when Chelsea won the Champions League 2012, my memory serves me.
2011, 2012. Yeah.
And he scored that penalty, and it was just such a moment. And I actually remember probably the first Champions League final. That probably shows how young I am, but it's probably the first Champions League final I remember watching with my dad, and he just was some player. The power, the strength, and I know Mo Salah probably once he leaves Liverpool will have left such a bigger legacy, but just currently as he's playing, I just don't think he has that almost aura that Didier Drogba has. Yourself?
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. I'm obviously a little bit older than you, Patrick, and I remember Didier Drogba when he first arrived at Chelsea, and I would say maybe the first few months of his career, he kind of had a little bit of a rocky start. But once he got into the flow of it in the Premier League and the Champions League, he was an incredible player. I remember a goal, I think he scored at Everton specifically, maybe around about 2007, 2008. He was so good at this, Didier Drogba. He was so strong. He gets the ball into his chest, and he's about 25 yards out, takes it on his chest, swivel, turn and hit into the top corner. And it was such an incredible strike with such power. And I remember being a young guy and just watching that and thinking, this guy's incredible. This is a striker that we've maybe not seen in a long time, combining power, combining pace, and so successful with Chelsea, and like you said, winning a Champions League, that writes your name into the history books forever.
And don't get me wrong, we're not writing off Mohamed Salah, an incredible player.
No, not at all, not at all.
And a fun fact for you all, last night he became the first Liverpool player ever to score in 5 consecutive European Cup matches at Anfield.
Yeah, and you think about the players Liverpool have had.
Yeah.
To write your name into the history books like that, that's incredible from Mo Salah.
I mean, it's just to score the goals, yes, for 5 in a row in the Champions League, arguably the hardest competition out there. He's showing. I don't think anyone's questioning he doesn't belong in that stage, but
He's really shown that he's up there at the top conversation of players, especially in this competition through the years.
We move on to our next game: Salzburg 0, Brest 4. Blair, were you expecting that first of all?
See, this is why I enjoy this show, Pash, because we can maybe give a little bit more airtime to a game that people may have missed or may not have paid too much attention to. I think this was one of the strangest games of football I have ever watched in my life. I've never seen a 4-0 where the team doesn't deserve to win. It was ridiculous. Okay. Salzburg had so many chances, and don't get me wrong, Brest, they delivered a masterclass in counter-attacking football. They were so clinical. Every time they went forward, it was a goal. It was unbelievable. They just sat in. Salzburg dominated. They had the chances. They couldn't put the ball in the net, and Brest went up the other end and scored, and they did it 4 times. And one man who did so well for Brest, and has been this season, is a player who is very familiar to people on these shows, Abdallah Sima. Obviously, there was talk in the summer that he may come back to Rangers after his loan spell last year, but he's now out at Brest. He scored 2 goals the other night, and he's really developing into this Champions League forward.
I saw one of the goals, and he just just gets behind the defenders and just slides the ball under the goalkeeper. And you don't hear that very often. You hear teams having that tactic. Let's sit in. Yeah. Let's kind of play this kind of that low block word that you all kind of hear from the managers and players, and try and get them on the counter attack. If you had told me this game ended 1-0 to Brest, how they set up and how the game was going, I would have believed you. But 4-0, I think I remember looking at that after the game, being like, what?
Yeah, and Salzburg are no mugs. They're a good European outfit these days. A team obviously part of the Red Bull group who pride themselves on bringing through young players and selling them on high. Funnily enough, that's really the complete opposite to Brest. This is how they have managed to achieve what they've achieved so far this season. They've gone with a bit of a different sort of mentality, really putting their faith in older players. The manager, Eric Roy, he's come in, and he believes there should be some sort of balance in the team. So they do like Abdallah Sima, mid-20s, a sort of youngish guy. But they have gone for guys who maybe are not a lesser known, but doing well in the French league, late 20s, early 30s. You look at the team last night, guys like Ludovic Ayorki, who played the ball through for Sima's first goal. He was brought in from Strasbourg at 30 years old. Strasbourg, middle of the table French team, a 30-year-old forward for them. He's been brought up to play Champions League football, and he's adapting to that level. Even guys like Roman Del Castillo, 28 years old, a mainstay at the club. He is incredible in that forward line for them. And Macedo Haidara, a free transfer. He spent time with Newcastle. He came in at 31 years old to shore up that back line. And maybe my favourite of them all, he's not played in the Champions League so far this season, Pierre Lesmilou, who viewers might recognise from playing at Norwich last year, 2 years ago, sorry. And he went to Norwich, he moved to Norwich for £6 million. And after 12 months, he played 33 games that season, but after 12 months, they made a £4 million loss on him. And they sold him on, they sold him to Brest, and now, Sporting Director Gregory Lorenzi said he's ageing like a fine wine. That's him in the centre midfield, 31 years old, dictating play for Brest. So it's really interesting how they have kind of gone against the grain, especially in French football, when they're all bringing through younger players to go with this sort of older, broader approach, and it seems to be paying dividends.
Experience means something.
Yeah.
As much as, and I think in today's current footballing market, when players are going for the likes of 60, 70 million pounds, a young academy player who looks like he could be the next hot thing is 25 million pounds.
Yeah.
Teams are maybe overlooking the names you've just mentioned there.
Yeah.
On a nice little deal. These players have played at the highest level before.
Yeah.
They've done it. And they can kind of shore up, as you say, these back lines. They can tell these young defenders how to do it.
I understand why the clubs do it, because these clubs have to survive and they have to make their money somehow. You look at Lille, for example, selling Lenny Euro to Manchester United for what, 50 million pounds, I think it was. That will see them through for a couple of years. You know what I mean? They can reinvest that money, and that's one player who is 19 years old. You know, so I understand why they do it, but I think Brest have shown that to sustain that success and to get it now rather than looking for the future always, it's maybe worthwhile finding some of those players that are in their late 20s, early 30s who can come in and do a job.
Speaking of French football and Lille,
yeah.
What a night it was. Lille won, Real Madrid 0. Jonathan David, the scenes at full time, if you haven't seen it, I think there's a nice little 1 minute clip up on YouTube. Have a look, because these these fans, these players, they went absolutely crazy. And as you can expect, they've just beaten the holders, Real Madrid.
Yeah, it was incredible. Like, to end Real Madrid's 36-game unbeaten run in all competitions. 36 games they've gone without losing a game, and Lille turn up and end it. I think Jonathan David, the goal scorer, he's a really interesting one for me. He's a player that I think maybe when he went to Lille, it wasn't as big a move as a lot of people maybe expected. And he's one of those players that never gets spoken about for a big move. I think all the chat has always been about Harry Kane, always been Victor Osimhen, all these guys who are like in the conversation for when teams need a centre forward. Maybe Jonathan David is never anyone's first choice, but you keep scoring goals like that against Real Madrid and somebody will come calling.
Someone will pick you up. And I think another one, obviously Real Madrid, some team they've got now, Kylian Mbappe playing in the Champions League for them. Also against Ethan Mbappe
Yes,
last night.
yes.
It was good from Lille. They let the cameras in. They were all celebrating after the game. Brother v brother. That must be quite fun though afterwards.
I think that was some mischief from the Lille admin last night, filming straight in on Ethan Mbappe, absolutely going for it, leading the celebrations in the Lille changing room against Real Madrid and beating your brother. There can't be anything better. You know what I mean?
Sure, there's a few text messages.
Oh,
flying
yeah,
in.
yeah.
Imagine that. I'm just thinking about that there.
Yeah, sitting
Imagine
at
just
family dinner at Sunday, you know, like that. You see-
Kylian Mbappe's just there. I'm here and I'm just messaging Kylian.
yeah.
Unlucky bod.
Yeah. Do you see the result of the weekend?
Yeah, Dad, you should have seen that. Absolutely skilled him. Just brilliant. And I think, speaking of brothers,
Yeah.
the referees, I don't know if you saw it, identical twins were the two officials in this game. Quite cool.
Yeah, it's something you don't see often. I did see the clip and I was a bit like, whoa, that's unusual. I just wonder if they got mixed up at any point on either side. But they definitely. I imagine you have an identical twin and you both go into refereeing and you both become linesmen. That's like joined at the hip material. It's really cool to see.
You could train together.
Yeah.
Well, before we head away, obviously the Champions League this year is slightly different. No groups, but we have a league table. Looking at the top, Borussia Dortmund, Brest, Benfica, Leverkusen and Liverpool make up the top 5. And in that bottom 5, well, the teams struggling, Young Boys, Slovan Bratislava, RB Salzburg, Svenza,
Or Red Star Belgrade for the rest of us.
Star Belgrade, if you weren't going to go for the home nation, Milan and Girona. Blair, I know it's way too early, but Opta is predicting that 9 points could be enough to get you into the knockout stages. Who do we think? Is there any big names you've seen who are going to maybe surprise us or miss out?
I think, I don't want to sit on the fence, but with this new format, it's far too early to tell. You just can't tell. 9 points, I think, will probably see you through. That seems to be the sort of the common knowledge that people are going with. And I think, just to divert a little bit, you've seen PSG losing to Arsenal the other night, and in the old format that might have been a really big result. They might have finished second in the group, but I think you can almost afford to lose one at this stage. If you're a big team, especially if you've got slightly easier fixtures coming up, I think if you lose one of your big games this far, it's not going to matter too much, because you know if you're a big side, you're going to make up those points eventually. But I think we'll really see this new format coming into its own when we get into match day 6, match day 7, when you see these teams who are playing each other in the league, who are up 1 or 2 places above each other, then those games will really matter, and we should see it coming into its own. But for now, I'm quite enjoying the new format. I'm not ready to be too critical about it yet. I'm quite liking it.
I'm enjoying it. Lots of games, lots of stuff to talk about. That's all we've got time for this week. We'll be back for match day 3 from October the 22nd. We look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for joining us here on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. For myself and Blair Malloy, we'll see you next time.